Chapter 246. Although Deng Ying Temple was built deep in the mountains and forests, its scale was by no means small. The architecture, large and small, wound and twisted, there was plenty of it. The bell tower alone had 3 structures. However, these 3 bell towers had no one to ring them. The entire temple was eerily silent. Old monk, how many people are left in your Deng Ying Temple? The man who had previously been called Old Chai by the fat man asked curiously. This man was quite bold. Even though the old monk seemed a little strange, he appeared unafraid. Hearing this man's question, the old monk pressed his palms together, turned back, and answered one thing while implying another. A mountain need not be high, it becomes famous if there is an immortal. Water need not be deep, it becomes numinous if there is a dragon. Those who are truly devout are always few. If it were otherwise, wouldn't everyone be able to become a Buddha? When he spoke the words, "become a Buddha," the smile on the old monk's face deepened. Everyone even felt that his face vaguely carried an indescribable flush. "Come, please, dear benefactors. Look, that is the lodging that has been prepared for you." The old monk, walking ahead, suddenly raised his hand and pointed forward. Everyone followed the direction of his finger. They saw a rather exquisitely built structure, 6 connected side rooms in a row. The conditions on the mountain are simple. Here, there are only 6 relatively decent rooms. I'm afraid you benefactors will have to bear with it a little. Fa Hua, I still have matters to attend to. In the coming days, you must take good care of the benefactors. You must also clearly explain the temple's rules to them. The young monk immediately pressed his palms together. This humble monk understands. After speaking, the old monk hurriedly left in one direction. His footsteps were somewhat rushed, as if he had something very important to do. Waiting until he was far away, the young monk turned back and spoke softly to everyone. "Dear benefactors, this humble monk's name is Fa Hua. I am the lowest-ranking monk at Deng Ying Temple, and on ordinary days, I am responsible for sweeping." Pausing for a moment, the young monk added, "Of course, now I am also responsible for ringing the bell. The rooms on this side have been cleaned for you. The temple does not serve breakfast, only lunch and dinner. Usually, we do not provide meat dishes. After all, the temple is full of monks. In about half an hour, it will be time for the evening meal. At that time, please come to the dining hall next door to eat together. Also, because we are deep in the mountains, the temple has no electricity. Electronic devices cannot be charged, so please bear with it. Every day at the hour of Shu, I will provide 1 red lantern for each room. It will be enough to light the room until the hour of Mao the next day." The young monk slowly explained these matters, then bid everyone farewell, saying he had to go prepare to ring the bell, and would do so at the appointed time. Watching the young monk walk away, the remaining 8 people began to divide the rooms. This is the 4th crimson door. You've all likely survived at least 3 doors before this. For the next 5 days, I hope we can cooperate sincerely and try to find the fastest way out so we can minimize our losses. The speaker was a strikingly beautiful woman named Shen Wei. She and a man of ordinary appearance who seemed somewhat frail and was named Duanzheng Tian were a couple, both belonging to the same ghost dwelling. Shen Wei's voice was gentle, like a kind girl next door, easily winning people over. Choosing rooms. Shall we draw lots to decide? Hey, you guys go ahead and pick first. Any room is the same, it doesn't matter where you stay. If a ghost wants to target someone, even if they're up in heaven, it's useless. Chaishan waved his hand impatiently, his tone truly insufferable. Shen Wei's boyfriend couldn't hold back. "A dog's mouth can't grow ivory. Can't you say something auspicious?" Chaishan was hot-tempered by nature. Hearing someone call him a dog, and a frail, pretty boy at that, how could he take it lying down? Oh, saying auspicious things. What's the use? Will saying them stop people from dying? Look at you, all weak and lacking yang energy. Maybe the ghost will come for you first. Worry about yourself. How dare you? Oh. What are you gonna do? Want to fight me? Look at these arms of mine. Do you even stand a chance? Seeing the two arguing louder and louder, Ningqiu Shui shook her head. She took the initiative to choose a room on the far right, saying, "All right, let's number them from left to right. We'll take room 6. Everyone remember your room numbers. Don't go to the wrong one to avoid misunderstandings. With that, Ningqiu Shui and Liu Renfeng walked ahead to room 6, pushed the door open, and entered. With them taking the lead, the others stopped arguing and each chose a room they liked. Although the monks of Deng Ying Temple had left them 6 neat little rooms, in reality, they only used 4, rooms 1, 3, 4, and 6. All were 2 people per room. They weren't fools. They knew that being separated in the world behind the crimson door was an extremely dangerous thing. After entering the room, Ningqiu Shui checked the surroundings as usual. Liu Renfeng also found some tattered scriptures in the room. These books had been flipped through many times, and they looked like pirated prints. Liu Renfeng casually opened one. Suddenly, a piece of paper fell out from inside. Curious, he picked it up, and his expression changed. "Xiao Gei, come here and look." Ningqiu Shui walked over to Liu Renfeng's side and looked at the paper in his hand. It was densely covered with crooked red cinnabar writing, looking bizarre and frantic. "Achieving Buddhahood? Achieving Buddhahood?" Ningqiu Shui was stunned. He and Liu Renfeng quickly checked the other scriptures, but none of the others had any loose paper inside. Besides the scriptures, there were also some unofficial historical records in the room, telling the life story of Shakyamuni Buddha. These books were just as worn and tattered, turned by countless hands over the years. These monks really know how to spread Buddhist culture. They know we don't like reading scriptures, so they prepared these historical tales instead. Liu Renfeng let out a chuckle. As for what Shakyamuni Buddha did in his lifetime, he had heard those stories countless times since childhood. Too lazy to flip through those historical accounts, he tossed them directly into the drawer. Buddhism made no distinction. Though he had grown up in a Taoist temple, he had still read extensively about Buddhism, especially the tales of Shakyamuni Buddha. They were fundamentally not the stuff of ordinary men, easily stirring people's curiosity about the strange and uncanny. The story he had heard the most, passed down in countless versions, was the tale of cutting flesh to feed the hawk. The story was simple. A hawk was chasing a dove, and the dove, with no escape, flew into the Buddha's arms, begging for protection. The Buddha, of course, could not let the hawk eat the dove, so he stopped the hawk. Seeing this, the hawk thought, "Oh, this old man isn't playing fair." It immediately scolded him. "You save it. Who saves me? If the hawk doesn't eat, it starves to death. You're clearly killing me." The Buddha heard this and thought to himself, "If that's the case, I'm committing an act of killing." He pondered for a moment, and it seemed true. So he pulled a knife from behind him and began cutting flesh from his own body. Whatever the dove weighed, he cut an equal amount of flesh for the hawk, finally achieving balance between the two sides. Ningqiu Shui listened to Liu Renfeng tell this story, caught between laughter and tears. "Big Beard, you shouldn't be telling fortunes. You should be telling stories instead." The moment he finished speaking, the sound of bells echoed from deep within the temple. "King! King! King!" The bell's resonance lingered long within the temple grounds. Only when it faded did a voice call out from the gate, the little monk's voice. "Honored patrons, the evening meal is ready. Please prepare yourselves and follow me to the dining hall." Led by the little monk, everyone made their way to the dining hall together. The moment they stepped through the door, a rich aroma hit them, the savory scent of minced meat. Liu Renfeng caught the smell, and his expression shifted instantly, but the other ghostly guests accompanying him, their eyes lit up. "Aha, that smells incredible. What is that aroma?" Chaishan flicked his sleeves and strode directly to the dining table. Seeing the meat floating in the porridge, he grinned. "Little monk Fahua, didn't you say the temple food had no meat? So what is this? Lingji mushrooms floating in the porridge?" Facing his provocative mockery, Fahua showed no anger. Instead, he spoke earnestly. "Perhaps to accommodate your esteemed statuses, the temple has prepared some preserved meat from the market." Chaishan let out a few sneers, sat down on a chair, and said to the young monk, "Your attitude is acceptable. I won't expose you." With that, he grabbed a spoon and took a loud slurp of the meat porridge. His face lit up with delight. "Oh my, your meat porridge is truly delicious. So fragrant, so fragrant. Everyone, sit down and try some." The others stared at Chaishan as if he were a fool. They truly couldn't understand how such a brash and foolish man had survived long enough to reach this door. "Hey, buddy, keep your voice down. There are still several masters in that room." Everyone took their seats. Ning Chu Shui inhaled the aroma of the meat porridge. To be honest, it was very fragrant. The cook's skill even surpassed that of Lu Renfeng. Ning Chu Shui stared at the bowl of meat porridge, recalling the young monk's earlier words. His gaze flickered to the monk's own bowl in the distance. It contained only green vegetables, no meat. Ning Chu Shui smiled at the young monk. "Little Shifu, could you trouble yourself to serve me a bowl of vegetable porridge? I'm abstaining from meat." The young monk was startled at first, then nodded gently. "Yes." As the young monk stood up, Lu Renfeng called out loudly, "Little monk, serve me a bowl too. I'm on a diet." He, too, had found an excuse. Naturally, they weren't the only ones who wanted vegetable porridge. When the young monk brought out a pot of it, several others followed, Ning Chu Shui and Lu Renfeng's lead, choosing the meatless option. Some did it to follow the crowd, but others remembered the young monk's earlier warning and sensed something strange about the sudden appearance of meat porridge. They dared not eat recklessly. Eating was easy, but vomiting it back up? That might prove difficult. Meanwhile, Chai Shan slurped his meat porridge noisily, shaking his head and clicking his tongue. "I told you fools you were stupid, but you wouldn't believe me. We've all been through a few doors by now. Can't you see? The Crimson Door never messes with where we sleep or what we eat." Duan Zhengtian sneered coldly. "Just because you haven't seen it happen doesn't mean it never does. How many doors have you even passed, acting so high and mighty?" Chai Shan snorted, tapping his bowl with his bamboo chopsticks, producing a sharp clinking sound. "I'm eating it anyway, so what? I'm not poisoned." Seeing his reckless attitude, the others fell silent, choosing to lower their heads and eat their own meals. They didn't care whether this man lived or died. They only hoped that when he did die, his blood wouldn't splatter onto them. Honestly, where did this idiot come from? Old Duan, forget it. Don't argue with that moron anymore. It's too much trouble. At that moment, Ning Chishui heard Shen Weiwei beside her muttering a curse under her breath as well. Duan Zhengtian, her frail boyfriend, leaned close to her ear and whispered with a smile, "Weiwei, I'm just putting on an act for him. The others in our group seem fairly smart, only this one stands out as a fool. Why not provoke him a little? Let him scout the path ahead for us." Hearing this, Shen Weiwei's eyes flickered. She lowered her head and continued eating, saying nothing more. Ning Chushui, however, was slightly taken aback. It seemed this frail-looking man was not what he appeared to be. The two spoke very quietly. If not for Ning Chushui's exceptionally sharp hearing, she would never have caught the content of their conversation. After the argument ended, the dining hall fell into relative silence. As she ate, Ning Chushui quickly scanned the room and noticed that besides their group, there were only 5 monks present. The abbot who had greeted them earlier had not come for the meal. The other 5 monks in the hall occasionally lifted their heads to stare at them. That gaze was somewhat terrifying. Every time their eyes landed on her, Ning Chishui could clearly feel every hair on her body stand on end, a deeply unsettling sensation. Soon, they finished eating. The other 5 monks in the hall rose and left, and the young monk began clearing away the bowls and chopsticks. Ning Chishui walked over to the young monk and asked softly, "Little Shifu, why hasn't the abbot come for his meal?" The young monk, who was busy cleaning, suddenly paused. He looked up and glanced at Ning Chishui, hesitating for a moment before replying, "Perhaps the abbot is fasting. I'm not entirely sure. I'm just a humble monk who sweeps and chants sutras. I know very little of other matters." Seeing his evasive answer, Ning Chushui changed the question. "Then, little Shifu, does Deng Ying Temple only have 6 monks?" The young monk shook his head, a look of reverence appearing on his face. In the past, Deng Ying Temple had a total of 24 monks. But later, the great masters all attained Buddhahood. The remaining monks were those of lesser aptitude, unable to comprehend the true essence of the Buddhist scriptures. It is shameful to say, I have been sweeping the temple gates for 10 years now. I have memorized all the scriptures in the temple, yet I understand nothing of the true Dharma. Perhaps I am simply dull-witted. The young monk seemed quite calm. When he spoke of attaining Buddhahood, there was a hint of longing in his voice, but it went no further. After saying this, he gave Ning Chu Shui no chance to ask more. He picked up the dishes and left. At the doorway, the young monk turned to the 8 people in the hall and said, "Noble patrons, in the deep mountains night falls early. Wild beasts may wander astray. It is already late. If you wish to tour the temple, tomorrow will not be too late. For now, please return to your rooms and rest early. The lamps for tonight, I will bring them to you shortly." With that, the young monk stepped out of the door, his figure vanishing into the dark, oppressive night. The sun had set. Inside the temple hall, only a few candles remained, casting light on a small area. But beyond the door, it was pitch black, dark as ink. Separated by a few dozen meters, they couldn't even make out their own lodgings. Those 6 rooms were plunged in darkness, stirring a sense of unease. "Should we head back?" Big Beard asked, noticing Ning Chu Shui still sitting still, with no intention of getting up. "Wait," Ning Chu Shui said. "Wait for the little monk to bring the candles, then we'll go." The 2 of them hadn't moved yet, but the others had. "I'm heading off first!" "Oh man, I'm full. Time to go back and get some good sleep. See you all tomorrow morning, brothers." Chaishan yawned, patted his belly, and strode straight into the darkness. His roommate was Lu Nanshan, a stout man with a gentle, mild-mannered appearance. Seeing Chaishan leave, Lu Nanshan had no choice but to reluctantly follow. Watching the 2 figures vanish into the blackness, the remaining 4 grew restless. Does anyone else want to go back? Should we go together?" A timid-looking girl with braids, Mei Wen, asked hesitantly. She stared into the darkness outside, her face full of fear. "There are 2 candles in the hall," Ning Chu Shui spoke up. "You can take one back with you." "Aren't you 2 coming?" Shen Weiwei asked curiously, looking at them. Ning Chu Shui smiled. "Full from dinner, we'll sit for a while." The others exchanged glances. After a moment of silence, they took one of the candles and made their way toward their lodgings. Watching their silhouettes swallowed by the darkness, Liu Renfeng flipped a coin over in his palm and sighed. "Tonight, there will be bloodshed. Did you do a reading for them?" Ning Chu Shui asked curiously, looking at Liu Renfeng. It was rare to see him perform fortune-telling for others. "No. Then how can you be so sure there will be bloodshed tonight?" "I just felt saying it that way would add to the atmosphere." Setting aside Liu Renfeng's jokes, Ning Chu Shui sat quietly in the temple hall, waiting. After the stars and moon had hidden themselves behind dark clouds, just a few minutes after everyone had left the hall, night had fully enveloped this deep mountain. Outside the room, it was nearly impossible to see anything. Fortunately, it wasn't long before the little monk arrived, carrying 6 candles as promised. Seeing this, Ning Chu Shui picked up the candle from the hall and, together with Liu Renfeng, headed toward their own lodgings. The little monk handed them the red candles. The 2 of them stepped into their room. Ning Chu Shui held the red candle and carefully inspected the room once more. After confirming nothing had been overlooked, he placed the candle on the table by the window. The flame of the red candle flickered. Though there was no wind in the room, the fire wavered unsteadily, as if it might go out at any moment. At first, this change was barely noticeable, but the flickering candlelight made the shadows in the room shift constantly. When you closed your eyes, you couldn't shake the feeling that something was fluttering through the air. This change brought a very unpleasant sensation. It made it impossible to calm down and rest. The fog is getting thick. Ning Chu Shui didn't get into bed. He stood by the window, gazing out at the pitch-black temple beyond. After nightfall, the mountain mist had begun to thicken. Damn it! This temple is seriously cursed. In the dead of night, there's not a single light outside. The moon has set, the wind is howling, and you can't see a thing. Now there's fog on top of it all. Who knows what might be wandering around the temple tonight? Liu Renfeng muttered under his breath. He still remembered the first time he entered the ghost dwelling. That fat guy who didn't believe in evil had jumped off the bus into the fog and ended up being skinned alive. It seemed that in the world beyond the Crimson Door, fog was always linked to danger. A chilling wind blew in from outside, causing the candle on the table by the window to tremble incessantly. Ning Chu Shui's expression shifted slightly, and he immediately closed the window. These rooms all had old-fashioned windows, not made of glass, but a thin, fragile layer of paper. Fortunately, even though the window paper was thin, it could still block the wind from outside. "Xiaogei, are we going to let this candle burn all night?" Liu Renfeng pointed at the red candle on the table and asked. Ning Shui countered, "Is there a problem?" Liu Renfeng's eyes lit up. Red, it's either great luck or great disaster. He had made himself quite clear. This candle wasn't an ordinary light source. If it wasn't used to ward off evil, then it was meant to bring calamity. "Let's leave it for now and see what happens. We have a chance to test it," Ning Shui said. Then he tossed a black photo album to Big Beard. It was the item left behind by the lady in black. Big Beard caught the album in his hands and chuckled. "All right, I'll follow Xiaogei's lead. Honestly, I don't think that little monk looks like a bad person, but I'm not willing to bet on it. After all, this Deng Ying temple reeks of strangeness from every corner." The two of them lay down on the bed, closed their eyes, and rested. At the same time, in room No. 1, Duanzheng Tian was panting heavily as he pulled away from his girlfriend. He glanced at the stopwatch, his face brimming with joy. Good, good, good! The old doctor's method really works. This time I lasted 5 more seconds." Highs. He was filled with a sense of accomplishment. Shen Weiwei calmly put her clothes back on. "Go to sleep early. We still have to tour the temple tomorrow. Right now we know absolutely nothing about this place. I feel uneasy." Duanzheng Tian chuckled, climbed into bed, and held Shen Weiwei close in the darkness. "Don't worry. No matter what happens tonight, it's definitely that bastard Chai Shan. That idiot," the little monk warned him so clearly. "Normal temples don't have meat, yet he still dared to eat it. I really don't know how he managed to survive all the way to the 4th door." Shen Weiwei stared at the candle by the window. A sense of foreboding rose in her heart. But she said nothing more. She only nodded slightly, then closed her eyes. Perhaps it was because of the thick fog surrounding the temple, but the wind outside was very faint, almost silent. Just before dawn, a very soft sound of footsteps came from outside the room. These footsteps were extremely faint. Compared to the thunderous snoring inside the room, they were nearly negligible. But Shen Weiwei, anxious and unable to sleep, still caught them with sharp awareness. She immediately sat up and looked toward the window. She wished she hadn't looked, because what she saw made her blood run cold. A dark, human-shaped shadow was standing outside their window, silently staring at them. In an instant, the last traces of drowsiness vanished from Shen Wei completely. Who was standing outside? Was it a person? Just as she hesitated whether to wake her boyfriend, the shadow outside suddenly moved. It raised a finger and gently poked through their paper window. The next moment, the thin window paper was punctured with a hole. The darkness outside, like water, silently seeped in through that small opening. Shen Wei's entire body trembled. She quickly shut her eyes tight. She was terrified of seeing a bloodshot eye staring back at her through that hole. Perhaps the one standing outside was a monster from the temple. If it saw she was still awake, it would suddenly burst in and kill her. With her eyes closed, she didn't see it. A long, thin bamboo tube was inserted through the hole in the window paper. Then it aimed at the red candle on their table and blew. Puff! The candle in their room went out. Thump, thump, thump. After finishing this task, the shadow outside silently slipped away. Hearing the footsteps of the shadow outside gradually fade away, Shen Wei, who had kept her eyes shut, finally dared to open them again. But now, the room was completely submerged in darkness. She could barely see a thing. Her boyfriend beside her was still sleeping like the dead. Shen Wei hurriedly shook Duanzheng Tian awake. "Tian-ge, wake up!" Duanzheng Tian was shaken for a long time before he finally opened his eyes. "What's wrong, Wei?" Shen Wei recounted what had just happened. He immediately snapped awake. Carefully, he got out of bed and walked to the window. He examined the candle closely, and his face turned pale. "There's definitely someone trying to set us up? They deliberately blew out our candles. No doubt they want to see if this candle is one of the conditions that triggers death." "Then who could it be?" Duanzheng Tian said coldly. "Who else could it be?" "It's definitely Chai Shan, that bastard. What a troublemaker." Shen Wei glanced at the hole in their window. Outside, it was pitch black, and she could vaguely feel a chill wind seeping in. She shuddered. So what do we do now? Duanzhang Tian was silent for a moment. Here's the plan. Wei Wei, come with me. Let's go to room 2 next door. That room is empty, but I noticed earlier when the little monk brought us the red candles, he had 6 in total on his tray, so the room next door should have some too. A hint of regret stirred in his heart. He didn't usually smoke, so he had no lighter or matches on him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a passive position. Shen Weiwei quickly agreed to his suggestion. Both of them felt that the red candle the little monk had left for them must serve a special purpose. If they didn't light the red candle in their room soon, with the long night ahead, who knew what they might encounter? After discussing it, they immediately stood up and pushed open the door of their room. Outside the door, the fog was thick and the darkness absolute. On the quiet, narrow corridor, the sound of their footsteps echoed. They walked to the door of the next room. Through the thin paper window, they saw no light inside. A bad premonition flashed through Duanzhang Tian's mind. He cautiously pushed the door open. Creak. A faint sound, and the scene inside the room unfolded before their eyes. It was pitch black inside. There were no candles at all. Duanzhang Tian stood frozen at the doorway. How could this be? Earlier, when the little monk brought the candles, he had counted them with his own eyes. The number on the tray exactly matched their 6 rooms. Could it be that the 2 remaining candles weren't meant for them? At this thought, Duanzhang Tian's heart turned cold. Shen Weiwei, standing behind him, gently tugged at his clothes. Tianjie, maybe we should go back. Duanzhang Tian glanced around and closed the door to room 2. The fog was growing thicker and thicker. It had already shrunk their visibility to less than 10 meters. Let's go a bit further. The other rooms definitely have lit candles. We just need to borrow a little fire from them, and then our candle will be useful. The sudden thickening of the fog made Duanzhang Tian feel an intense unease. But since they were already out, he figured they might as well grit their teeth and endure it, solve the problem, and at least get some peace of mind for the night. As soon as he finished speaking, Shen Weiwei suddenly let go of his clothes. Duanzhang Tian thought she was scared, so he instinctively grabbed her hand and headed toward room 3. At the door of room 3 this time, through the thin paper window, there was indeed a flicker of firelight inside. Duanzhang Tian was overjoyed and quickly knocked on the door.
Knock, 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 knock.
It was late, so to make sure he woke the person inside, Duanzhang Tian knocked quite hard. But no matter how hard he pounded on the door, inside, there was still no response. The cold night mist gnawed relentlessly at his mind, and at the courage that had just surged within him. Damn it! Open the door! Don't play dead! Don't play dead! The unease in Duanzhang Tian's heart grew with each passing second. He prayed, over and over. His knocking hand was already sore, but the person inside still wouldn't open. Mei Wen, Dan Hong, can you hear me? Please open the door. Finally, Duanzhang Tian couldn't take it anymore. He screamed at the door. Bang! Bang! Open up! I'm begging you. My candle was blown out. I need a light. Open the door, I'm begging you. His voice grew more frantic, more panicked. Not just because the mist outside was so cold, but because Duanzhang Tian had just realized something absolutely terrifying. The hand he was holding, his girlfriend's hand, was ice cold, cold as frozen stone. That was definitely not the temperature of a living person. It was then that Duanzhang Tian suddenly remembered. Earlier, when Shen Weiwei let go of his hand, he had instinctively grabbed hers. That was the moment. That was the moment. Ah, you seem to have figured it out. Ah. Beside his ear, a cold voice rang out, laced with a sinister laugh. The voice was warped and dripping with malice. Duanzhang Tian's body went rigid instantly. He didn't dare turn his head. In his hand, he could only grip that candle tightly. He had originally possessed a ghost artifact, a ring. But just now, when Shen Weiwei let go, she had casually taken it from him. Duanzhang Tian had always been deeply devoted to his beautiful girlfriend, who always clung to him. So he hadn't thought much of it. After all, they were together. Whoever held it was the same. But now, the situation had changed. He wanted to let go of that freezing hand, but the other's grip was like iron, clamping down on him. Don't be afraid. I am the Buddha. I am the Buddha. Come worship me. Worship me. I am the Buddha. He he ha ha. That twisted voice kept repeating itself in Duan Zhengtian's ear, drawing closer and closer, as if it wanted to burrow into his skull. Duan Zhengtian slowly turned his head and saw a face more horrifying than anything he had ever seen in his life. Ah! A blood-curdling scream echoed through the corridor. At that moment, Shen Weiwei had already returned to room 1. Hearing that terrible scream, she curled up under the blanket, trembling violently. She covered her ears tightly, biting her lip until it turned white. The ring in her hand had already developed clear cracks. In truth, on her way back to room 1 just now, she had encountered that thing once. The ghost artifact had saved her life. That was how she had made it back safely. But her boyfriend, Duan Zhengtian, was not so lucky. Listening to the endless screams of agony, Shen Weiwei didn't dare imagine what unspeakable horrors Duan Zhengtian was experiencing outside. In her mind, there was only one thought now. Kill Duan Zhengtian, so he would never come looking for her again. Don't come find me. Don't come find me. Please. Shen Weiwei curled up under the blanket like a ball of flesh, her lips bitten white. The agonized screams of Duan Zhengtian had faded away at some unknown point. But outside the door, another sound emerged. Footsteps, drawing closer from afar. Thump, thump, thump. Hearing the footsteps outside, Shen Weiwei curled up in her blanket, her entire body trembling. It's here. It's come. So there really was no escape, was there? Don't come in. Don't come in. Don't come in. Shen Weiwei prayed frantically in her heart. The footsteps outside drew nearer and nearer, finally stopping right before her door, sealing her in despair. Shen Weiwei's mind went blank beneath the blanket. She had absolutely no idea what to do. This ghost had come for her, which meant her unlucky boyfriend, Duan Zhengtian, was already dead. The ghost artifact ring that belonged to Duan Zhengtian, which she held, was now useless. If the ghost outside wanted to kill her, she was as good as dead. Her heart hammered wildly, as if it would leap out of her throat. Shen Weiwei clutched the blanket tightly, forcing her ragged breaths to the quietest possible whisper. She strained her hearing, trying to catch any sound from outside the door. But minutes passed, and Shen Weiwei still heard nothing from beyond the door. Only silence remained in the darkness, broken only by the sound of her own heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. Within this heartbeat, counting down the seconds of her terror, Shen Weiwei's fear began to ebb just slightly. She took a deep breath, slowly cracked her eyes open, and pulled the blanket down just a sliver. Her surroundings were quiet. There was no feeling of anything strange. Her gaze moved slowly, inch by inch, towards the window. When her eyes reached the window, Shen Weiwei's heart stopped. Although there was no light outside, there was just enough for her to see the dark silhouette standing at the window. He had never left at all. That ghostly thing had been standing behind the window watching her the entire time. Realizing this truth in that instant, Shen Weiwei nearly fainted. But having survived a few crimson doors, her psychological resilience was stronger than she thought. She couldn't pass out. Her gaze froze, finally landing on the small hole that had been poked in the window earlier. Shen Weiwei held her breath. There was an eye, a familiar eye, but one filled with a deep, profound hatred. This eye, it was her boyfriend Duan Zhengtian's eye. The area around the eye was a bloody mess, as if it had been torn out by something. As their gazes met, an unprecedented fear flooded Shen Weiwei's heart. She let out a single scream and then fainted. The next morning, the bell tolled. The mist within the temple retreated, as if obeying a command. Everything became clear once more. A terrified scream echoed from the corridor. "Hurry, someone's dead!" Hearing this cry, people filed out of their rooms one by one. The moment they stepped outside, they were hit by a thick, nauseating stench of blood. On the stone floor of the corridor lay a mangled corpse. Blood was everywhere, staining a wide area around it a deep, dark red. The blood had turned brown, completely dried. Seeing this body, several people immediately vomited. "Oh my God, is the skin peeled off?" "Not just peeled, it's completely flayed." "Last night, did any of you hear screams?" Faced with this question, everyone shook their heads. They weren't lying, but last night, they truly hadn't heard any cries for help. Seeing the corpse, Shen Weiwei couldn't help but remember the eye outside her window the night before. Her gaze turned frantic. She was certain the person peeping at her through the hole in the window was Duan Zhengtian, her dead boyfriend. Was he angry at her for stealing the ring from his body? If he had turned into a vengeful spirit, would he come back tonight to take revenge? Just thinking about this possibility made Shen Weiwei tremble all over. As if sensing her unease, Ning Chui walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. Startled by the sudden touch, Shen Weiwei let out a scream. Only after realizing it was Ning Chu Shui beside her did she calm down a little. "Are you all right?" Ning Chu Shui asked. Shen Weiwei shook her head. "Was the deceased your boyfriend?" Since not many people had entered the Crimson Door with them this time, Ning Chu Shui remembered each person clearly. Before Shen Weiwei could nod, Chai Shan laughed first. "What did I tell you? Look at that weakling demeanor of his. The ghost would definitely come for him first." His tone held no sympathy whatsoever. Instead, it was filled with mockery and schadenfreude, making everyone who heard it deeply uncomfortable. Shen Weiwei lifted her eyes, glaring at Chai Shan with burning fury. She pointed a trembling finger at him and said through gritted teeth, "Duan Zhengtian was killed by him." Everyone's gaze immediately shifted to Chai Shan. He showed no panic, speaking calmly. "Don't go framing me. I don't have the skill to flay someone so perfectly." Shen Weiwei's face turned pale as she recounted what had happened the night before to everyone. "It was because he deliberately blew out the red candle in our room last night that everything that followed happened." After speaking, she led everyone to her door. On the window, there was indeed a small hole. Seeing that hole, Chai Shan's expression changed. "Last night, only you and Duan Zhengtian had a conflict. If not you, then who?" Shen Weiwei said, her whole body trembling with rage. Facing Shen Weiwei's accusations and everyone's suspicion, Chai Shan remained unflustered. "Your story is very vivid, but it seems there isn't any evidence that can prove I'm the culprit, is there? Besides, we can't rule out the possibility that this was done by the ghosts in the temple." Seeing Chai Shan's smug expression, Shen Weiwei let out a scream, nearly lunging at him to scratch his face, but Ning Chu Shui held her back. "First, fighting him won't solve anything. Second, you can't beat him anyway." Ning Chu Shui calmly helped Shen Weiwei regain her composure. "Actually, something happened at our place last night too." Lunan Shan, a stout man with a kindly face, spoke up. "Just before dawn, a figure kept lurking outside the room. It seemed desperate to get in and pushed at the door several times. If we hadn't woken up in time and blocked the door, I'm afraid it would have actually made it inside." The moment he finished, Mei Wen, the timid-looking girl among the group, trembled as she added, "Same for us. That ghostly thing just kept pushing the door. And there's more." She recalled something terrifying and couldn't help but shudder. And the person outside the room was muttering something. The voice was very faint and muffled, but I remember it. It was the voice of the abbot of Deng Ying Temple. "What about you guys?" Ning Chu Shui's calm demeanor brought a great sense of security. Mei Wen asked, and Li Renfeng replied, "We were fine, slept soundly all night. If you hadn't woken us up this morning, I bet we could have slept straight through till noon and had lunch." Everyone exchanged strange glances upon hearing this. "You didn't hear any noise outside your door at all?" Li Renfeng shook his head. Just then, the little monk finished ringing the bell and slowly walked over from a distance. Seeing everyone gathered there, he looked slightly surprised. "Benefactors, why are you all gathered here so early in the morning?" Chai Shan sneered. "Are you blind? There's a corpse this big on the ground. Can't you see it?" The little monk's eyes swept across the ground at his words, but he showed no surprise at all. "So it's happened after all," the little monk muttered under his breath. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. "What do you mean by that?" "Little Shifu, did you know we would run into trouble?" Shen Weiwei asked, agitated. After her boyfriend's death, she seemed filled with nothing but resentment. The little monk's expression turned somewhat grave, but he didn't answer Shen Weiwei's question. Instead, he glanced at everyone and asked seriously, "I gave everyone instructions last night. Did the benefactors follow them?" Shen Weiwei swallowed hard. She had initially planned to say she'd followed all of them, but the truth was otherwise. Little Shifu, just tell us, what the hell is going on in this temple? Little Shifu must know, right? You must know. She pushed past Ningqiu Shui, strode up to the little monk, and grabbed his shoulders, shaking him violently. The little monk wobbled from her shaking and barely managed to break free from Shen Weiwei's grip. Amitabha, female benefactor, this is a pure Buddhist sanctuary. Please don't do this. The little monk pressed his palms together, his eyes filled with fear as he muttered, forgive me, under his breath. Chai Shan, standing nearby, couldn't hold back anymore. Enough with the rambling. Just tell us straight up what's going on in this temple. Facing everyone's accusations, the little monk Fa Hua let out a heavy sigh. This humble monk truly does not know what is wrong within the temple. You lie, Chai Shan roared directly, not sparing him an ounce of face. How many years have you been a monk in this temple? How could you possibly not know? Fa Hua stated the truth plainly. This humble monk truly does not know. Chai Shan sneered. If you didn't know, then why did you just say, so it has happened again? Fa Hua was silent for a long time, then slowly uttered a sentence that sent a chill down everyone's spine. Because, benefactors, you are not the first guest to arrive at Deng Ying Temple. After the little monk's words, everyone's expressions soured. Only Ningqiu Shui smiled, pointing at the mutilated corpse on the ground. Little Master Fa Hua means that corpses like this have appeared many times before? Fa Hua nodded slightly. The temple is not very safe at night. I hope you benefactors will not wander around. Having said this, the little monk began to clean up the corpse. The group naturally did not stay there with him. Daylight was precious. They had to quickly take advantage of the relative safety of the day to explore the entire temple. Sister Wei Wei, would you like to come with us? Being alone is truly too dangerous. Mei Wen looked at Shen Weiwei, her eyes full of concern. Shen Weiwei nodded lightly. In the world behind the Crimson Door, traveling in a group was certainly safer than acting alone. All right, stop worrying. Let's make a quick round of the temple. The main gate is definitely sealed, so let's see if there's a secret passage to leave. Chai Shan yawned, as if the death of one of their members was no big deal to him. He and the fat, kind-faced man took the lead and left. Xiaoge, where should we go? Li Renfeng looked at Ningqiu Shui. He thought for a moment, then said, let's first circle the main hall, then head to the bell tower. Li Renfeng nodded slightly, following behind Ningqiu Shui, his fingertips constantly fidgeting with a coin. Even during the day, the temple was eerily quiet. Within the vast compound, there was not a single soul in sight. Stranger still, there seemed to be no insects either. Xiaoge, I keep feeling something is off. Ningqiu Shui did not turn around. What's off? Liu Renfeng quickened his pace and whispered, if a ghost in the temple wants to kill, then kill. Why would it skin people? Ningqiu Shui did not answer the question directly. Instead, he said, remember the question I just asked the little monk? Liu Renfeng recalled it and realized Ningqiu Shui's question was quite subtle. Before us, others have entered this temple. In the end, some of them died here, and they were also skinned. This is not an accident. The two quickly arrived at the main hall, where the Buddha statues were enshrined. The hall was thick with the scent of incense. There were several Buddha statues, and 300 white candles blazed brightly. On the left and right sides of the incense hall stood 8 Buddha statues, with 2 more on the main altar. All were gilded bronze, draped in kasayas, their expressions solemn. At the center of the hall was a single meditation cushion, alongside an offering plate and an incense burner. There was no wooden fish, perhaps it was left for traveling pilgrims to pay their respects. The two of them took a stroll around the main hall. Liu Renfeng spoke with a faintly mocking tone. Why build something so magnificent? There aren't even any pilgrims. What's that saying again? All that glitters is not gold. Inside, it's rotten to the core. Hearing this, Ningqiu Shui looked toward the incense burner and the offering plate. There was truly nothing there. In fact, they looked rather shabby compared to the lavish main hall. Aside from that, there seemed to be no other discoveries inside the main hall. This place was truly quite empty. Speaking here even produced an echo. There were no hidden corners where secrets could be concealed. The two walked around once, confirmed there was nothing unusual, and prepared to leave. But just as they stepped out of the main hall's entrance, Li Renfeng suddenly shuddered. He turned his head to look back inside the hall. He kept feeling as though something was watching him. Could it be those Buddha statues? Li Renfeng swept his gaze across the faces of the statues, but their eyes were all fixed straight ahead, none of them glancing at him. Not the Buddha statues. Then what was watching him? Leaving the main hall, the two continued toward the bell tower. Along the way, Li Renfeng told Ning Qishui about this feeling. The latter nodded slightly, indicating that he had sensed it too. I always felt those Buddha statues were off somehow, Ning Qishui said, a contemplative expression on his face. Staying there any longer might be dangerous. Let's go check the bell tower first. The two intended to head to a nearby bell tower, but the moment they set foot on the first step below, they heard a terrified woman's scream from above.
Ah!
The two exchanged glances. That's Shen Wei Wei! The bell tower wasn't very tall, roughly 3 stories high. The two quickly made their way up. A massive bronze bell stood towering in the center of the bell tower. From the traces of age left behind, this bell must have been many years old. On the high platform, there were only 3 people. They were, in order, Shen Wei Wei, Dan Hong, and Mei Wen. Among them, Dan Hong was standing in a corner of the platform, his gaze stunned as he stared into the hanging bronze bell. Shen Wei Wei and Mei Wen were inside it. What are you standing there dumbfounded for? Hurry up and help them. Lu Renfeng saw Dan Hong standing there like an idiot and couldn't help but curse. He stepped forward and pulled the 2 girls out from under the bronze bell. Shen Wei Wei and Mei Wen were both pale as sheets, their entire bodies trembling. What's wrong? Scared that badly? Shen Wei Wei covered her neck with one hand, gripping Lu Renfeng's sturdy arm with the other, her eyes filled with terror. There's a ghost. Lu Renfeng's expression stiffened upon hearing this. Where's the ghost? Inside the bell. Lu Renfeng looked suspiciously into the large bell, cautiously stepping inside. But he saw no ghost at all, only a few carved markings. Xiaoge, come look at this! He waved to Ning Qishui, who was waiting outside. Ning Qishui crawled in after him. His gaze fell upon the carved characters. He traced them gently with his fingertip. Flee, quickly, he murmured. Then a cryptic smile spread across his face. I understand now. They ducked low and slipped out from under the bronze bell. Tell us, Shen Wei Wei, what exactly happened to you and Mei Wen inside that bell just now? Shen Wei Wei's lips trembled. Just now, Mei Wen found some carvings inside the bell, but it was too dark for her to see clearly. She asked me to take a look. I thought maybe I could see them, so I went in. But when Mei Wen and I were examining the characters, something terrifying suddenly attacked us. The 2 listeners exchanged a glance. Their interest piqued. Something terrifying? What kind of thing? Shen Wei Wei shook her head. I couldn't see it clearly. It bit my ear, and then it attacked Wen Wen's mouth. But luckily, Wen Wen used her ghost artifact to drive it back. First the ear, then the mouth. Shen Wei Wei's account twisted their expressions into a strange grimace. Fearing they didn't believe her, Shen Wei Wei grew anxious. It's true. If you don't believe me, look at my ear. She turned her head, revealing the wound behind her ear. Ning Qishui stepped forward to examine it. He found a deep bite mark, still oozing blood. Then he checked Mei Wen's lips. It seems you 2 really were attacked by something terrifying. He paused. We need to leave. This place isn't safe. The 2 women paled and nodded silently. As they left, Dan Hong walked past Ning Qishui. He seemed about to say something, his lips moving soundlessly for a moment. But in the end, he remained silent and departed. After seeing them off, Ning Qishui turned back to find Lu Renfeng still studying the carvings inside the bell. Stop looking. Those characters were just carved recently. Big Beard, still inside the bell, was startled. Xiaoje, how do you know? Ning Qishui replied, This place is exposed to the elements, sun, wind, and heavy mountain mist. The bell's surface rusts easily. Look at the rust flakes on the ground. They were left by the little monk when he rang the bell. If there were old carvings inside, they'd be heavily corroded by rust. They wouldn't be this clear to the touch. Big Beard's face grew thoughtful. Furthermore, Ning Qishui continued, if I'm not mistaken, the bite mark behind Shen Wei Wei's ear was made by Mei Wen. Lu Renfeng's eyes widened. She bit Shen Weiwei? Then why does she have a wound on her own mouth? Ning Shui was silent for a moment. She bit herself. She probably carved those characters in the bell first. Then she pretended to discover something, luring Shen Weiwei inside the big bell so Dan Hong couldn't see. As for why she bit Shen Weiwei, I'm not sure. He paused. But when I checked their wounds, I touched both of their hands. Their body temperatures were normal for living people. Another pause. And Dan Hong, he might have noticed something too, but he didn't say anything. Perhaps he wasn't certain either. All of them are hiding something. Ning Shui stood on the high platform of the bell tower, scanning the temple grounds. He still saw no one. Besides, this temple is eerily empty. Not only are there no tourists, but I've barely seen any monks either. The abbot who received us yesterday has also mysteriously vanished. Liu Renfeng sneered. That bald old man, one look and you know he's no good. When he greeted us yesterday, his mouth was all smiles, but his eyes were like a starving wolf suddenly spotting meat. Ah, isn't that the little monk over there? What is he doing? Big Beard was rambling on when his gaze suddenly swept across a distant figure. He recognized it as the young monk named Fa Hua, whose steps seemed hurried, as if he was searching for something. Let's go check it out. Without hesitation, the two immediately ran over to the young monk, nearly colliding with him. Little monk, what are you looking for? Fa Hua's face looked grim. It's gone. What's gone? That skinless corpse is gone. Last night, the flayed corpse of Duan Zhengtian had vanished. Without the abbot's permission, this humble monk dared not bury anyone within the temple grounds on my own. I prepared to take the tools outside the temple to bury Benefactor Duan, but when I returned after fetching the tools, Benefactor Duan's corpse had disappeared. Fawa's face was a mask of terror and confusion. How long was the interval between going and returning? Less than a quarter of an hour. Ning Shui's eyes flickered. Take me to see. Fa Hua immediately led the two to the room where he had previously searched for the tools. The door still bore traces of blood and the corpse's outline, suggesting he wasn't lying to them. Judging by Duan Zhengtian's build, he was about 120 jin. An ordinary person could move him without much difficulty. If the corpse didn't get up and run off on its own, then someone must have been watching you, little master. They waited until you went inside to find the tools, then took the chance to move Duan Zhengtian's body. Little master, did you hear any noise outside at that time? Fa Hua shook his head upon hearing this. No. At the time, this humble monk was frantically searching for a shovel. I wasn't paying much attention to what was happening outside. But there have never been any wild animals in the temple on ordinary days. Who would take a corpse away? Ning Shui didn't answer him. She crouched down by the doorway and examined it carefully. After a moment, she chuckled. Little master, you cleaned up too thoroughly. There's not a speck of ash left. That person didn't even leave a footprint. But since the corpse has been taken, don't worry about it. Maybe Shen Weiwei wanted to bury her boyfriend herself. Hearing Ning Shui's words, Fa Hua hesitated for a moment, then still earnestly instructed. Very well. If Benefactor Ning sees Benefactor Duan's corpse while touring the temple, please inform this humble monk immediately. Ning Shui nodded. After that, they watched the young monk walk away with a heavy expression. Xiaojie, why did you lie to him? Facing Big Beard's question, Ning Shui said, he didn't find that corpse. But the little monk's reaction was very interesting. Based on his expression, he seemed to be worried about something. Pausing, Ning Shui's voice turned strange. Players killed by locals, or who die for unknown reasons at the Crimson Door, won't turn into vengeful spirits. So what is the little monk worried about? Li Renfeng stared in the direction the little monk had left, deep in thought. Before he left, he specifically reminded us, if we find the body, we must report it to him. It seems, if the body isn't found, something might happen, something very bad. Lunchtime arrived quickly. Ning Shui and Big Beard walked to the cafeteria. This time, even before stepping inside, they could smell a thick, heavy scent of meat. Their expressions turned strange. Sitting in the cafeteria, 2 bowls of porridge, emitting that pungent meat aroma, were already placed before them. As usual, Ning Shui asked the little monk for 2 bowls of plain congee. Oh my! Today's porridge smells amazing. Chai Shan's grating voice rang out from a distance. He pushed the door open and stepped in, his face full of rapture. Little Shifu Fahua, if you please, give me another bowl. Shen Weiwei's expression was very unpleasant. Staring at the white, lean meat floating in the porridge, she couldn't help but think of her dead boyfriend. The meaty scent wafting through the air no longer seemed rich. Instead, it made her feel slightly nauseous. Tsk. Some people just don't know how to appreciate things. Such delicious meat porridge, and they won't eat it. What a waste. Chai Shan lamented. Shen Weiwei's face turned cold, and she snapped back. Fine, if you love meat porridge so much, I'll give you mine. Eat your fill. Hearing this, Chai Shan's expression stiffened slightly. Then he retorted with a hint of awkwardness. One bowl is enough for me. Do you think everyone is like you, eating like a pig? The two bickered for a few moments, when suddenly Mei Wen, who was sitting beside Shen Weiwei, set down her bowl. Her eyes were fixed intently on Shen Weiwei's bowl of meat porridge. Weiwei Jie, if you're not going to eat that meat porridge, can I have it? Shen Weiwei turned to look at Mei Wen beside her, startled by the look in her eyes for some reason. Mei Wen, are you okay? Mei Wen slowly lifted her head. Seeming to realize her gaze was off, she gave an awkward smile. I'm fine. I just haven't eaten anything since this morning, so I'm a little hungry. Shen Wei hesitated for a moment, then handed her bowl of meat porridge to Mei Wen. Thank you. Thank you. Mei Wen's face showed obvious gratitude, and then she picked up the bowl and began to devour the porridge ravenously. Ning Qishui watched Mei Wen like this, his eyes narrowing slowly. He remembered how Mei Wen had eaten on the first day, very elegantly, with none of this frantic urgency. A person with elegance ingrained in their bones would never become like this just from hunger. Shen Weiwei also seemed to sense something was wrong with Mei Wen. Watching her eat like a starving wolf, she couldn't help but stand up, pick up her bowl, and move to sit next to Ning Qishui. Mei Wen didn't pay it any mind either. He just focused on eating the meat porridge in his bowl. Tsk! Haven't you eaten in a few hundred years? Look at him, Chai Shan sneered. I'm full, going back to sleep. He set his bowl down, stood up, and left the dining hall. Liu Renfeng watched him, then lowered his voice to whisper in Ning Qishui's ear. Xiaoge, what's wrong with Mei Wen? Ning Qishui watched Mei Wen finish the porridge in his bowl, still not satisfied, using his spoon to scrape the remnants from the sides. I don't know, but it's definitely not normal. Besides, yesterday during the meal, there were still 5 monks in the dining hall. Now there are only 4. Maybe by tomorrow or even tonight, there'll be fewer. Liu Renfeng's back broke out in goosebumps. He looked at the bowl of meat porridge beside him and couldn't help but overthink. Is it because of the meat porridge in the bowl? Liu Renfeng asked, but he quickly dismissed his own speculation. No, that's not right. If it were because of the meat porridge, Chai Shan would have no reason to still be normal. Ning Qishui stared intently at Chai Shan's empty bowl, his voice full of implication. That's hard to say. Ning Qishui narrowed his eyes, because if his speculation was true, it meant that man named Chai Shan really wanted them dead. Within the Crimson Door, the most terrifying thing was often not the ghost, but those who used the ghost to harm their teammates. Shen Weiwei might be telling the truth. Last night, Chai Shan probably ran to their door, used something to poke through the paper window, and blew out the candles in their room. As if hearing her name, Shen Weiwei finally couldn't hold back. Seeing Ning Qishui and Liu Renfeng whispering, but unable to hear them, she couldn't help feeling anxious. She always felt like the two of them were discussing something very important. It's nothing, I'm full, want to go out for a walk? Faced with Ning Qishui's invitation, Shen Weiwei was even a little stunned. Me? The other person glanced at Dan Hong, who was still silently sitting beside Mei Wen. Dan Hong, are you done eating? Want to come out for a walk? Dan Hong, who had been a bit dazed, snapped back to reality, hesitated for a moment, then gave a slight nod. Oh right, Mei Wen, you seem hungry. If you're not full, you can have these bowls of meat porridge. Mei Wen's eyes lit up. Really? Then I won't be polite. Before the words even finished, his hand was already reaching for the nearest bowl of meat porridge. Then he buried his head and continued eating, praising between bites. So delicious, so delicious. I can never get enough. The four of them stepped out the door, hearing this sound, and couldn't help but shiver. Earlier at the bell tower, what did you want to tell me? Leaving the dining hall, Ning Chushui finally asked Dan Hong. He kept his head down, looking at the path. Hearing Ning Chushui, he finally looked up, his voice tinged with fear. Remember earlier at the bell tower, when Shen Weiwei and Mei Wen said they were attacked? Ning Chushui nodded. Dan Hong glanced around nervously, confirming no one was behind him before speaking. Actually, back then, because I was worried something might happen to the two of them, I crouched down and watched them closely. He paused, then looked at Shen Weiwei, explaining, I wasn't trying to spy on you two. Shen Weiwei waved her hand, signaling it was fine. Only then did Dan Hong continue. I saw Mei Wen open her mouth and bite Shen Weiwei. The moment he finished, Shen Weiwei trembled violently, a cold sweat breaking out on her back. You're serious? Dan Hong's face turned grim as he nodded slightly. The light inside the bell was very dim. I couldn't see the details clearly, but I'm sure I saw Mei Wen lean in close to you, and then bite your ear. Her condition at that moment was extremely strange. Her neck stretched forward, extending to an unnatural length, probably 5 times longer than a normal person's neck. That's why, when you turned around and screamed, you didn't realize it. After all, her body was far away from you. Once her neck returned to normal, the distance between you was at least 2 steps. Hearing Dan Hong's description, Shen Weiwei grew even more terrified. The bite wound on her ear began to throb with a dull ache, and goosebumps rose on the surrounding skin. Then why didn't you say anything back then? Shen Weiwei gritted her teeth, her voice tinged with anger. Dan Hong shook his head. At the time, I thought I was seeing things. Before I could get a closer look, she had already bitten you. Then your scream startled Mei Wen, and she almost immediately returned to normal. Big Beard, upon hearing this, looked at Ning Chushui with a strange expression. Xiao Gei, just as you said. It really was Mei Wen who bit Shen Weiwei. Everyone was startled and turned to look at Ning Chushui. He shrugged. I just thought the bite marks looked very similar, so I took a wild guess. Shen Weiwei's face turned pale. Why did Mei Wen become like that? Could it be because she ate the meat porridge? In truth, everyone had noticed Mei Wen's unusual condition at noon today. That bastard Chai Shan also ate the meat porridge. Why isn't he affected? Li Renfeng sneered. At the mention of the meat porridge, Ning Chushui suddenly thought of something. He looked at everyone and asked, Has anyone seen Lunan Shang? He didn't come to eat today. When the chubby guy was brought up, everyone present fell silent. Now that you mention it, wasn't he with Chai Shan? Yeah, I saw them together this morning too. Lunan Shang must have gone somewhere nearby with Chai Shan. I saw Chai Shan acting normal, so he probably knows where Lunan Shang went. Maybe he's not feeling well? Ning Chushui was silent for a moment. Let's go back and check. Everyone immediately headed toward their quarters. When they reached room 4, where Lunan Shang and Chai Shan stayed, they knocked gently on the door. No one answered. Ah, didn't Chai Shan say he was coming back to sleep? Ning Chushui muttered, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. Isn't this a bit rude? Shen Weiwei hesitated outside, reluctant to enter Lunan Shang and Chai Shan's room immediately. But then she felt a strong push from behind. Get in there! Li Renfeng shoved her into the room. Once inside, Shen Weiwei no longer felt as constrained as before and began actively exploring the room. But this room was just like theirs, spotlessly clean, with nothing in it. Hey, what exactly are we looking for in here? After searching for a while, Shen Weiwei looked bewildered. Actually, she wasn't the only one. Dan Hong also had no idea why they had entered this room. As for Li Renfeng, he simply hadn't thought about it at all. Ning Chushui came in, so he followed. There's something in the chamber pot, Ning Chushui suddenly said. Everyone's expressions instantly turned very strange upon hearing this. No way, little brother. Let me educate you a bit. A chamber pot is for holding waste. Having something in it is perfectly normal. Big Beard hadn't even finished his sentence before he saw Ning Chushui carrying the chamber pot to the door. There's no waste inside, Ning Chushui said calmly. Our room doesn't have any drafts at all. If there were waste in the pot, the smell would be overwhelming. Did any of you smell waste when you came in? Everyone shook their heads, but they still felt very uncomfortable watching Ning Chushui messing with that chamber pot. He brought the pot into the light, used a twig to stir inside it, and his expression shifted slightly. Little brother, your tastes are way too strong. Shen Weiwei's face turned pale. Ning Chushui ignored her, staring intently at the chamber pot as if lost in thought. No wonder Chai Shan was fine. Seeing that he seemed to have made a discovery, Liu Renfeng immediately moved closer. Little brother, what's wrong? Were they constipated or something? Ning Chushui rolled his eyes. Close enough. Look at what this is. Liu Renfeng borrowed the light from outside the room, peered closely, and his expression suddenly changed. This is meat? Ning Chushui nodded. Yeah. He directly dumped all the meat from the chamber pot onto the ground. The other two rushed over, staring at the meat on the floor, astonishment clear in their eyes. How is this possible? Is this the meat from the porridge that Chai Shan threw up? Ning Chushui's eyes darkened. I stirred that meat porridge and have a rough idea of how much meat was in it. In this chamber pot, it's about the amount from 2 bowls. That bastard Chai Shan, he never actually ate the meat in the porridge at all. The meatballs in the porridge were relatively small, but round and distinct, and there weren't many of them. He probably held them in his mouth while eating without swallowing, just drank the broth, didn't eat the meat. Ning Chushui looked at the meatballs dumped from the chamber pot. If he had divided them into 2 portions to hold in his mouth, it was entirely possible. Damn it, that bastard! And he lied to us! Shen Weiwei stared at the meat on the ground, cursing with a vulgarity completely at odds with her gentle appearance. Even her pretty face was twisted with rage. After speaking, she turned to leave. Where are you going? Dan Hong asked. Shen Weiwei, I'm going to find him and demand an explanation for this meat in the chamber pot. Dan Hong shook his head. Are you stupid? Even if you find him, even if he admits everything, what can you do? Kill him? Do you dare? Dan Hong asked 3 times in a row, like a bucket of ice water poured over her head, snapping Shen Weiwei out of her anger. Fine, give the chamber pot back to them. Let's clean this place up a bit. Everyone busied themselves for a while. After finishing their tasks, they were about to leave when they saw a plump figure approaching from a distance. As the figure drew closer, they recognized it as Lunan Sheng, the one who hadn't come to the cafeteria for lunch. His face was flushed red, and one hand was rubbing his round belly, as if he was very satisfied. Everyone's here. Seeing the group, Lunan Sheng flashed his trademark grin. Ning Chushui asked, Lunan Sheng, why didn't you come to the cafeteria at noon? He smirked. Wasn't hungry. Thought I'd take a stroll around the temple, might stumble upon some clues. Ning Chushui pressed on. So, did you find anything? Lunan Sheng shook his head and sighed. No. Without giving Ning Chushui a chance to ask more, he opened the door to his room, stepped inside, and slammed it shut, locking it behind him. Did you all just see? Dan Hong's voice trailed off, hesitant. See what? Shen Weiwei looked at him, puzzled. Dan Hong stared intently at room number 4, waving for everyone to follow him into the courtyard. Then, uncertainly, he said, Just now, when Lunan Sheng smiled, I think I saw hair stuck between his teeth. A moment of silence passed. Shen Weiwei swallowed hard, her eyelid twitching. You're serious? Dan Hong took a deep breath. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I saw something. Unable to bear the creeping dread in her heart, Shen Weiwei scratched her head, her voice tinged with impatience. Again with I think. Can't you be more certain? Dan Hong fell silent. I can't control it. I'm warning you all. Stay away from Lunan Sheng. There's something off about him. As he spoke, Mei Wen emerged from the cafeteria and walked toward them. Her figure was frail, yet she exuded an overwhelming sense of oppression. The wound on Shen Weiwei's ear began to burn. Instinctively, she hid behind Dan Hong, eyeing Mei Wen warily. Mei Wen's face was flushed, her expression serene. Everyone, you're all here. Thank you for the porridge. I had a very satisfying lunch. I'm a bit sleepy now. I'll go rest. She greeted them warmly, then suddenly inhaled deeply. Oh, what's that wonderful smell? She walked over to the door of room number 4, pressing her face against it and sniffing repeatedly, as if utterly captivated. The bizarre behavior sent chills down everyone's spine. Room number 4. the room Lunan Shang had just entered. But that room, they had all been inside, and there was no smell at all. Mei Wen pressed against the door for a long time, listening intently, before reluctantly returning to her own room. What was she listening to? Shen Weiwei's voice trembled. No one answered her, but they had all witnessed Mei Wen's strange actions. Compared to her behavior in the cafeteria, the eeriness surrounding her had only deepened. Ning Qishui's heart stirred. He picked up a small bamboo twig from the ground, walked to room 3, and pierced it through the paper window. His movements were very gentle, almost silent. Once done, under the tense gazes of the 3 others, Ning Qishui pressed his eye to that tiny hole. Through it, he could clearly see the situation inside the room. But then, the scene within made Ning Qishui freeze in shock. Mei Wen had said she was sleepy, yet she was not asleep at all. She stood beside the bed, her back to the door, head bowed low. Ning Qishui watched her for about 5 minutes. She did not move, not even once, until a voice rang out from not far behind him. Hey, hey, hey! What are you people doing? Peeping on someone, huh? Caught you red-handed. Hearing that familiar yet grating voice, everyone outside frowned. The owner of that voice was Chai Shan. The moment his voice appeared, Ning Qishui suddenly noticed. Mei Wen, who had been standing motionless by the bed, slowly turned around. He immediately averted his gaze, then took a few steps back and walked out into the courtyard. Chai Shan stepped forward, his face wearing that "I am the messenger of justice" expression, eyeing them suspiciously. But those who knew his vile behavior would not indulge him. Liu Renfeng strode over, grabbed Chai Shan by the collar, and lifted him straight off the ground. Ah! What are you doing? What? Caught you in a bad act, so now you want to kill me to silence me? I warn you. Before he could finish, the door to room 3 beside them suddenly swung open. Mei Wen's face emerged abruptly from the darkness behind the door, making Liu Renfeng and Chai Shan, who were closest, scream in terror. They saw it clearly. Mei Wen's eyes were filled with bloodshot veins spreading across the whites, tiny and dense, terrifying to behold. Liu Renfeng remembered clearly. Just moments ago, when Mei Wen returned, her eyes were normal. In only a few short minutes, how had they become like this? Who is peeping at me? The words were almost forced out from her throat. After speaking, the corners of Mei Wen's mouth curled into a sinister smile. Seeing the situation was bad, Liu Renfeng immediately widened his eyes and said, "It was this guy. Just now he ran to your window and peeped. We caught him red-handed." Chai Shan froze on the spot upon hearing this. "No way. The one peeping was you. How can you pin this on me? You're lying. Don't you dare frame me." "It was clearly you peeping, and I caught you when I came back. Now you're shifting the blame to me?" Liu Renfeng ignored Chai Shan, who was spitting with rage, and said to Mei Wen, "Hey, they saw it too. If you don't believe me, just ask them." Mei Wen followed the direction of Liu Renfeng's finger toward Ning Qishui and the others. They nodded slightly. "That's right. Chai Shan was the one who poked a hole in your window and peeped at you while you were sleeping." After saying this, Ning Qishui raised a hand to his forehead, stepped forward, and said with a pained expression, "Chai Shan, I know a personality like yours would never win over any girl in real life, but when we pursue a girl, we have to be upright and honorable. Peeping is wrong after all. If it's wrong, I'll admit it. It's no big deal. I'll just fix it later." Chai Shan glared. I. After only a moment of hesitation, Mei Wen stepped up to Liu Renfeng and flashed a smile at Chai Shan. "Don't peep next time." Her smile was utterly sinister. It was the kind of smile that sent a chill down your spine just by looking at it. Perhaps it was fear, or maybe embarrassment and anger at being falsely accused, but Chai Shan suddenly shoved Liu Renfeng's hand away and cursed. "Damn it, I told you. I wasn't peeping. Don't you understand human speech? Even if your scrawny body stripped naked and stood right in front of me, I wouldn't bother to look. And as for the rest of you, just you wait." After hurling a few insults at Mei Wen, Chai Shan turned and spat threats at the others. Glaring, he opened the door to room 4. But the moment he saw Lunan Shang inside, he slammed it shut again, his movements swift and sharp. Then he opened the door to room 5 and stepped inside. Bam! He slammed the door shut, but Mei Wen still stood at the entrance of room 3, staring fixedly in that direction. For a long time, she didn't move. Finally, she turned around stiffly and returned to her own room. Witnessing this, Liu Renfeng glanced at Dan Hong with a hint of schadenfreude. Still dare to sleep in room 3 tonight? Dan Hong shuddered. I'll just go to room 2 instead. With such an unsettling incident, everyone felt something was off, so they stopped wandering around for the rest of the afternoon. Dinner arrived on time. Those who hadn't eaten the meat porridge took one look at Mei Wen's demeanor and didn't dare try it. They hastily downed some plain congee and retreated to their rooms. At Shen Weiwei's request, Dan Hong agreed to stay with her in room 1. Since she had no objections, he was happy to have a companion, especially one who was a beauty. Night fell quickly, and silence enveloped everything. The cold mountain mist once again seeped into the temple, carrying with it a bone-piercing chill and dampness. The little monk appeared on schedule, holding 6 candles. He knocked on the doors of all 6 rooms one by one. Whether or not anyone was inside, he placed a candle on the table by the window. In room 6, Ning Chushui stared at the red candle on the table. Her expression shifted slightly. She turned her head to look at Liu Renfeng and asked, "Big Beard, do you have any matches?" Liu Renfeng nodded. The moment he did, he saw Ning Chushui blow out the candle on the table. "Give me the matches."
Whoosh!
Liu Renfeng, lying on the bed, tossed a matchbox into Ning Chushui's hand. "Scratch! Scratch!" By the light of the struck match, the extinguished red candle was relit. After confirming there was no issue, Ning Chushui blew out the candle once more. "Hey, little brother, what are you doing?" Liu Renfeng was baffled by her series of small actions. "I'm just confirming whether the match can light this candle." "Why?" "Because tonight, we can't keep the candle burning forever." Ning Chushui's next words nearly made Liu Renfeng leap out of bed. "This candle is about a quarter shorter than last night's red candle. Damn it, is that true or false?" He scrambled out of bed, walked to the window, and stared at Ning Chushui's red candle. "It is indeed a bit shorter." Ning Chushui said, "Trust me, my eyes are a ruler. If it's only a quarter shorter, that's fine, but over the next 2 nights, if this candle keeps shrinking, we'll be in big trouble." Liu Renfeng understood Ning Chushui's meaning. "Xiaoge, are you planning to save this candle for tomorrow or the day after?" Ning Chushui nodded. "I'll go to room 2 and get that candle first. Then each of us will have one. Let's go together." "No, you stay here and keep watch." "All right, then Xiaoge, go quickly and come back fast." It was around 8 in the evening, still early. The little monk had just left not long ago, so the chances of danger were low. Ning Chushui went straight to room 2, pushed the door open, retrieved the red candle inside, and returned to room 6. Everything went smoothly, Ning Chushui said. Then he blew out the red candle in his hand. Now they had 2 candles. "So, are we sleeping tonight or not?" Ning Chushui glanced at the clock. "Sleep. We'll light the candle again at midnight, then blow it out at 6 in the morning." Big Beard nodded. "All right." At the same time, Chai Shan in room 5 also noticed the problem with the candle. "I feel like I've been tricked. Why is this candle shorter than yesterday?" He picked up the candle and examined it closely. Before long, his gaze grew certain. It really is a bit shorter. That means this candle can't possibly burn until dawn, the safe time. "I need to check room 2. The people in rooms 3 and 4 are all messed up from eating the meat porridge, so I definitely can't go to those 2 rooms. The woman in room 1 is very beautiful. That man named Dan Hong might be with her, so one of rooms 1 and 2 should be empty. I can try my luck." Thinking this, Chai Shan immediately opened the door. He didn't bring the candle from his room. Instead, he hid it under the desk. The light outside was very dim. If he carried a candle around outside, people in the rooms would easily spot him, and running might blow it out. Based on his experience, before midnight, the chances of encountering evil spirits outside were very slim. Besides, what he wanted to do wouldn't take too long. Leaving room 5, Chai Shan headed straight for Ning Chushui's room 6. His eyes held a trace of resentment. The events of the day were still vivid in his mind. But when he reached the door of room 6, he noticed something very strange. There was no candlelight in this room at all. He had been thinking about how to blow out the candle inside, but before he could act, the room was already pitch black. Could those 2 have hidden the candles? Or perhaps they moved them all to room number 1? Shan wondered, suspicion gnawing at him. After a moment's hesitation, he still reached out a finger and poked it through the paper window of room number 6. Inside, it was truly pitch black, nearly impossible to see anything. A chill of wariness ran through Shan. He immediately pulled back from the window, then moved toward room number 2 on the left. But when he reached room number 2, he found it was also pitch black, no candlelight at all. Shan's eyes narrowed. This is bad! This is very bad. He knew the little monk's habits wouldn't change easily. Every nightfall, a candle was placed in each room. Yet now, the candles for rooms 2 and 6 were both missing. This sent his CPU into overdrive. He shifted his gaze to room number 1. A flickering candlelight glowed there. The paper window still had the small hole he had poked with a bamboo tube yesterday. Shan pressed his eye to that tiny hole, peering into room number 1. The candle had been moved to the bedside. It seemed that after the first night, they were all on guard against each other. Solving things the old way was no longer possible. But inside the room, there were only 2 people and 1 candle. Where had the other 2 people and the other 2 candles gone? Could they have taken the candles out of the room and gone elsewhere to sleep? Thinking this, Shan furrowed his brow. Who would be that stupid? Just as he was puzzling over it, a gust of yin wind swept through the end of the corridor. Shan shuddered, his entire body turning cold. He had been walking for so long without getting what he wanted, and the unease in his heart grew stronger. The mist within the temple thickened once more. Shan felt danger closing in. He hesitated no longer, turning to head back to room number 5. But as he passed room number 3, he faltered. After a moment's pause, Shan approached the window again, gently poked through the paper, and peered inside through the small hole. On the table by the window, a red candle was burning. Yet no matter how Shan adjusted his angle, he couldn't see the woman named Mei Wen inside the room. How did she just vanish? Shan couldn't understand what was happening. He stood there, hesitating for a while. Seeing that the mist had already crept this far, Shan gritted his teeth and pushed open the door to room number 3. The horrifying scene he had imagined did not occur. The woman named Mei Wen wasn't hiding behind the door, nor was she lying on the ceiling. The room was completely empty, not a single soul. Overjoyed, Shan immediately grabbed the red candle from the table and hurriedly ran back to room number 5. In his ecstasy, Shan didn't notice that when he turned around, under the candlelight, the shadows on the wall of the room, there were 2. One other shadow, with disheveled hair, clung tightly to his back. Running back to his own room, Shan breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the 2 candles on the table, a satisfied smile curling at the corner of his mouth. With these 2 candles, he would surely survive tonight. As for the others, without enough candles to light their way when the mist cleared by morning, they would likely meet with misfortune. The more people died, the happier he would be. As long as everyone else was dead, he would be safe. To stop anyone from sneaking into his room to steal the candle, and to keep the ghosts outside from shoving the door open, he locked it tight and lay down on the bed, stretching out with a sigh. I wonder which unlucky bastard will die tonight. Don't blame me. I drank the meat porridge, but I didn't eat the meat inside. The little monk warned you so clearly, and you still chose to eat. If something happens, you only have your own stupidity to blame. Shan smirked, and just like that, beneath the bright, flickering candlelight, he drifted off to sleep. Midnight. Shan was trapped in a chaotic nightmare. This nightmare was strange, yet terrifyingly real. He dreamed of that woman Mei Wen carrying a steaming bowl of meat porridge. She walked toward him, step by step. Eat the porridge. Why won't you eat the porridge? Isn't this your favorite, meat porridge? Eat quickly, eat quickly. Of course, he didn't dare touch that bowl, but his body was frozen. He could only watch, helpless, as Mei Wen drew closer. When her face was nearly upon him, he saw it, countless cracks splitting across her skin. Thick black blood oozed from those fissures, flooding her face until it crumbled like stone. Piece by piece, the flesh fell away, and beneath that blood-soaked mask of skin grew an old, withered face. It was the face of the abbot of Deng Ying Temple, a face of deep wrinkles and savage cruelty, with wild white eyes burning with madness. eat quickly, finish this bowl of porridge, and I will become a Buddha." Suddenly he woke. Chaishan screamed in terror, bolting upright in bed. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat, his breath ragged. "Just a dream. Scared me half to death." He patted his chest, his color just beginning to return, when he noticed something horrifying. His body went rigid with dread. Chaishan forced himself to focus and finally realized the truth. His room was pitch black. The red candle that should have been burning had gone out for some reason. The moment he understood this, his mind went blank. Didn't I have a red candle in my room? Why did it suddenly go out? He sat on the bed, not daring to move. The darkness drained every ounce of his courage. His eyes darted toward the extinguished candle, then to the door and the window. The window is sealed tight, the door too. No wind from outside could have blown it out. Unless... A thought struck him like lightning, a thought that made his blood run cold. Candles don't just go out on their own unless someone blew it out. He didn't sleepwalk. So, was there someone else in the room? He swallowed, a dry, instinctive gulp, and then he noticed something else strange. His bed was freezing cold, an unnatural cold. Logically, he had been lying there for so long. The spot where he slept should have been warm at least. His hand pressed unconsciously into the mattress. The feeling was oddly slick. This wasn't a normal sensation. Chaishan knew exactly what it was. He was far too familiar with it. His gaze dropped, falling upon the bed he had just been lying on, and his eyes filled with pure terror. He hadn't been lying on a mattress at all. He had been lying on a flayed human skin. That piece of human skin had been stretched into a rectangular shape. The scalp was gone. The rest of it covered the entire bed. From the facial features, one could recognize it as Mei Wen's skin. It had no eye sockets, yet it stared fixedly at Chaishan. Suddenly, the corner of its mouth curled into a sinister smile. "Didn't you like peeping at me? Well, now I'll let you have a good look." When Chaishan saw Mei Wen's human skin, he let out a terrified scream. Like a stray dog that had its tail stepped on, he sprang up from the bed. In the pitch-black darkness, Chaishan clutched a red candle in one hand and held the ghost artifact that had appeared on his body in the other, staring intently at the human skin on the bed. The skin body twitched. Its mouth let out a maniacal laugh. This laughter sounded like a fusion of two voices. Chaishan could hear the abbot's voice and Mei Wen's voice within it. "He he! Ha ha! Didn't you like watching? Now I have no clothes on. Why aren't you looking anymore?" This eerie voice echoed in Chaishan's ears. He kept backing away, watching as the figure on the bed slowly stood up. In the darkness, their eyes met for a fleeting moment. Chaishan felt as if his very soul was about to freeze. The last shred of reason in his heart was consumed by fear. Without a second thought, he spun around, slammed into the door of the room, and fled towards room number 1. He knew someone was in room number 1. If they opened the door, he could surely borrow the candlelight to survive. Outside, the thick fog had already engulfed the entire corridor. It was filled with a bone-piercing chill and dampness, almost seeping into every pore of Chaishan's body, penetrating to his very marrow. He knew there was definitely something unclean lurking in this fog. However, Chaishan dared not stop. Mei Wen's human skin in the room had already staggered out the door. In the dense fog, Mei Wen's human skin became even more terrifying. Chaishan ran like a madman, fleeing towards room number 1. The faint candlelight from inside the room seeped through the paper window. Seeing this, a glimmer of hope flashed through his despairing heart. He pounded on the door with all his might. "Bang! Bang! Bang! Open the door! Open the door!" He pounded and screamed for help. Hearing no movement from inside the room, Chaishan gritted his teeth and began to kick the door, even trying to shoulder it open. However, the already flimsy wooden door had now become incredibly sturdy. No matter how hard he rammed it, the door wouldn't budge. Chaishan wasn't a fool. He immediately understood the trick. He quickly moved to the side of the window that had been broken, shouting loudly inside, "I've found a way to survive! Let me in now!" This shout woke the two people inside the room. They stirred from their sleep. Seeing this, Chaishan's heart leaped with joy. He continued to shout, "Hurry up and open the door for me. If I die, don't even think about finding a way out for yourselves." Hearing the words, "way to survive," The two people sleeping in room number 1 immediately sat up and walked over to the window. "It's him!" After confirming that the person standing outside the window was Chai Shan, neither of them had a good expression for him. "Stop talking nonsense. Open the door now." Chai Shan's voice was frantic, and as he spoke, he kept glancing to the right, as if something terrifying lurked there. "What, did someone blow out the candle in your room? Had to run to our room to hide?" Shen Wei sneered, her voice dripping with vengeful satisfaction. She had already concluded that Chai Shan was the one who pulled the shady tricks outside their room on the first night, blowing out their candle, ultimately leading to her boyfriend's inexplicable flaying and nearly killing her too. Now, the tables had turned. Though she didn't understand why Chai Shan had suddenly chosen to leave his own room, one thing was certain: he must have encountered something truly horrifying. Opening the door for him now could very well invite dangers they couldn't foresee. "Stop your nonsense. Open the door, quickly. I've found a way out. If you don't open it, and I take that way out to the grave with me, none of you will survive." Chai Shan's face twisted in fury, but no matter how he threatened, the two inside remained indifferent. "What's with the act? If you really found a way out, why not come share it with us?" "I'm telling the truth. Use your brains. If I wasn't looking for a way out, why would I go out tonight? To die?" Seeing the human skin from room 4 drawing closer and closer, Chai Shan was practically fighting the overwhelming urge to flee, forcing himself to communicate with them. The last shred of reason told him that running into the mist now would surely mean more harm than good. Shen Wei let out a cold laugh. "Who knows if you snuck out tonight just to blow out someone else's candle?" Beads of sweat dotted Chai Shan's forehead, but he spoke rapidly. "Even if I did it the first night, would I use the same trick 2 nights in a row? You can be stupid, but don't think everyone else is an idiot." The two exchanged glances, seemingly swayed by Chai Shan's words. Could it be that this guy really went looking for a way out tonight? Still, doubts lingered. They didn't immediately open the door. "Tell us the way out first, then we'll open the door." Dan Hong pressed one hand against the door, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. By now, Mei Wen's human skin had reached room 2. It was only 10 steps away from Chai Shan. Chai Shan gritted his teeth and quickly fabricated a story. "There's a hidden passage to escape this temple, very well concealed. Open the door for me, get through tonight, and tomorrow morning I'll lead you out. If we can survive these 5 days, we can leave this temple directly through that passage." Dan Hong gave a slight nod. "Thanks for the info, but we're not opening the door." His calm tone sent Chai Shan into a rage. "Damn it! Just you wait! Just you wait!" Chai Shan cursed the two people in the room like a madman, then turned and fled into the mist. "Xiaoge, it's time." In room 6, Li Renfeng checked the time, then struck a match to light the candle. The light instantly dispelled the darkness in the room. The faint candlelight flickered in both their eyes. "Tsk, it's the dead of night and bone-piercingly cold." Li Renfeng rubbed his arms, goosebumps already rising. "There's no more noise outside." Ning Shui walked to the window and peered out through the small hole in the paper window that Chai Shan had poked earlier. That Chai Shan, he must have run into the mist by now. Their room was the farthest to the right, the furthest from room 1. Fortunately, at midnight, Chai Shan had run past their room with a great commotion, and the outside was truly silent. So even if Chai Shan was shouting outside room 1, Ning Shui could still hear a little. Tsk, 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 running into the mist in the middle of the night. Life and death are uncertain. Li Renfeng's voice carried a hint of schadenfreude. He always hated evil like an enemy, and Chai Shan was a man of vicious schemes. He wouldn't feel sorry for whatever tragic end Chai Shan met. Ning Shui thought for a moment. He might not die tonight. Li Renfeng, who was fiddling with a coin, froze. How could he possibly survive? There must be a limit to the number of deaths each day in this land of the dead. We have to survive for 5 days, and there are only 8 of us. Based on our numbers, I estimate that no more than 2 people will die each day. Of course, this is just my judgment. If I'm right, I think the ones who will die tonight are Mei Wen and Lu Nan. Li Renfeng raised an eyebrow. I can understand Mei Wen. She drank so much of that meat porridge, and she's been acting strange since yesterday. like she was bewitched. But Lunan just didn't show up for dinner. Why would he die? Yesterday, Lunan hadn't come for lunch or dinner. Ning Chu Shui said, Lunan did eat the first meal with us. Ate the meat porridge. When he came back yesterday afternoon, Dan Hong said she saw hair in Lunan's mouth. Do you remember? Li Renfeng nodded. She wasn't mistaken. There really was hair in Lunan's mouth. Hearing this, Li Renfeng's eyes widened. No way? Xiao Gei, are you sure you weren't seeing things? Ning Chu Shui shook his head. There is absolutely no mistaking it. Perhaps, after they ate the meat in the meat porridge, they were no longer human. Earlier, when the little monk buried the corpse, Duanzheng Tian's body mysteriously disappeared. It's very likely that Lunan stole it. Moreover, judging by Fa Hua's reaction to Lunan, he probably guessed what would happen after the body was stolen. Before us, several groups of travelers had visited Deng Ying Temple. It's possible that similar incidents have occurred more than once. That's why Fa Hua warned us that if we found a corpse, we must report it to him immediately. Li Renfeng listened to Ning Chu Shui's words, and a chill ran down his spine. He had originally thought Mei Wen was the most abnormal among them, but now it seemed Lunan was the most abnormal of all. Thinking about what Lunan had done during yesterday's lunch, Li Renfeng couldn't help but shudder. Although Chai Shan also drank the meat porridge, he didn't eat the meatballs inside. His body was barely affected. At least on the surface, it didn't show. This suggests one thing. The thing truly affecting their minds is the unidentified meat in the porridge. Recalling the dwindling number of monks in the temple, Liu Renfeng felt an even deeper chill, one that crept all the way to the crown of his head. The note he had seen in the room earlier, the historical records in the unofficial chronicles, and the missing monks, all the clues pointed to one truth. Xiaogei, do you think the meat in the porridge is connected to the missing monks in the temple? Li Renfeng asked. But before Ning Chu Shui could answer, there was a knock on their door. Knock, knock, knock. 3 steady beats. This sudden sound in the dead of night was like a blade piercing through the silence. Who is it? Ning Chu Shui, standing by the window, asked. It's me, the figure outside the door replied. The voice was somewhat familiar. After searching his memory, Ning Chu Shui immediately recognized it. It was Lunan's voice. What's the matter? Lunan spoke again. There's something I'd like to discuss with the two of you. Could you open the door first? Ning Chu Shui and Liu Renfeng exchanged glances. The latter immediately said loudly, Sorry, we'd like to open the door for you, but there's a bit of an unexpected situation in the room right now. We can't open it. Lunan, hearing this from outside, was slightly taken aback. An unexpected situation? What kind of unexpected situation? Li Renfeng cleared his throat. We're taking a dump. After he said this, Lunan outside the door fell silent for a moment. Then I'll wait for you. When you're done, open the door for me. Li Renfeng replied, All right, no problem. We'll open the door for you as soon as we're done. After he spoke, there was no further sound from outside. Ning Chu Shui gestured for Liu Renfeng to hand him the red candle. Liu Renfeng crept over, holding the candle, and placed it in Ning Chu Shui's hand. Then Ning Chu Shui signaled to him. Liu Renfeng understood and returned to the bed, grabbing the chamber pot from the room, placing it beneath him, and sitting directly on it. Time ticked by, second by agonizing second. About half an hour passed, and Lunan outside the door seemed to lose patience. He knocked on the room again. Knock, knock, knock. This time his knocking was much more urgent. Still not done? It's been half an hour? Are you finished yet? Liu Renfeng raised his voice, speaking with impatience. What's with the rush? Even squatting on the toilet needs time. I'm constipated. At home, I usually sit on the toilet for 6 hours before I'm done. Just wait. Once I'm finished, I'll open the door for you. 6 hours. That was when the first bell of the morning would ring and the mist would clear. Lunan, hearing this from outside, immediately grew anxious. 6 hours to take a shit? He had shed his usual gentle demeanor and was now cursing. Liu Renfeng glanced at Ning Chu Shui, who was crouching beneath the window, and said nonchalantly, Yeah, that's right. This is actually short. If I'm not in the mood, I might even sleep on the toilet. Lunan outside the door seemed to sense that Liu Renfeng was making things up. He paced back and forth in the hallway. then walked over to the window where Chai Shan had earlier poked a small hole. Slowly, he bent down and peered through that tiny opening into the room. He immediately saw Liu Renfeng sitting on the chamber pot by the bed. Liu Renfeng saw his eyes too. Under the faint red candlelight by the window, Liu Renfeng instantly noticed a large patch of bloody flesh around Lu Nan's eyes. The feeling was as if his face had been skinned. "Aren't you supposed to be taking a shit?" Outside the door, Lu Nan's voice had turned cold. Liu Renfeng stared straight at him. That's right. The door to the room was struck with terrifying force. The opponent's strength was immense. The entire wooden door rattled violently, as if it could be smashed open at any moment. Liu Renfeng, no longer pretending to sit on the chamber pot, immediately stood up and braced himself behind the door. "Open the door! Open the door now!" Lu Nan shouted as he frantically shoved against the door. Beneath his anger and urgency, there was a hint of barely concealed fear and panic. Liu Renfeng pressed his weight firmly against the door, feeling as though his body might shatter. Though his physique wasn't as strong as Ning Chushui's, he was tall and heavy, nearly 200 pounds. An ordinary person couldn't possibly push him aside, but the impact from the other side, even through a solid wooden door, nearly sent him flying. After just the first hit, Liu Renfeng concluded that the Lu Nan outside the door was definitely not human. "Open the door now! I have something very important." Liu Renfeng braced himself and cursed. "Damn it. Do you really think I'm some fool? If I let you in today, I'll write my name backwards." The fat man outside, upon hearing this, slammed into the door harder and faster. But no matter how hard he tried, that wooden door seemed nailed to the frame, impossible to open. As the two struggled, Ning Chushui picked up the red candle and approached the small hole in the window. By the dim candlelight and the moonlight, he saw the person shoving the door outside, a faceless figure, drenched in blood. Based on his build and voice, the man outside was none other than Lu Nan. However, what struck Ning Chushui as strange was that this skinless Lu Nan did not seem to be dead, nor had he turned into a ghost. He possessed a terrifyingly clear mind, capable of conversing with normal people. And, just like Duan Zhengtian, who had died on the first night, the scalp with hair on his head was still intact. His entire body was flayed, leaving only the scalp. Ning Chushui murmured, "Is there some special purpose for the scalps of these people?" Lu Nan pounded on the door for about 10 minutes. He seemed to grow tired, or perhaps his body had simply fallen apart, unable to continue, and finally gave up. He slumped down outside the door, weeping and begging for help. "Please, help me. Before dawn, if I don't find my skin, I will die. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die." The two people behind the window exchanged a glance. Ning Chushui, moved by a sliver of pity, asked, "Did you see who skinned you?" Lu Nan's voice was thick with terror. "I had a terrible dream. I dreamed I was dragged into the main hall of the temple. The Buddha statues there seemed to come alive, surrounding me and laughing. One of them was wearing a blood-red kasaya. He took out a razor and said he wanted me to take refuge. I was so scared at the time, I didn't dare refuse them. As a result, that man in the blood-red kasaya used the razor to peel off my skin. I passed out then. When I woke up, I was thrown outside. In the mist, the man in the blood-red kasaya told me that if I wanted to survive, I had to find a human skin to wear before sunrise." Hearing this, Liu Renfeng cursed directly through the door. "Bastard! So you were knocking on our door in the middle of the night because you wanted our skin. Why didn't I realize how despicable you were from the start?" Lu Nan's voice was filled with panic. "Brother, I really have no other choice. I clearly didn't do anything wrong. Why am I the one who has to die?" Ning Chushui, calm by the window, replied, "No, you did. You ate the meat porridge you shouldn't have eaten at that first dinner." Hearing the words meat porridge, Lu Nan froze. Meat porridge? Impossible. It can't be the meat porridge. Chai Shan ate the meat porridge too. Why is he fine? Ning Chushui explained slowly. He did eat the meat porridge, but he didn't eat the meat in the porridge. He turned around and vomited it into the chamber pot in the room. You shared a room with him. Didn't you notice? Upon hearing this, Lu Nan's eyes went wide on the spot. How could this be? He did it on purpose. His goal was to trick others into eating the meat porridge too. You weren't the only one fooled. There was also that girl named Mei Wen. Ning Chushui finished speaking, then directed the candlelight towards the small hole in the window, swaying it in front of the dazed Lunan outside. That man just ran into the mist. If nothing unexpected happens, you won't be the only one skinned tonight. If you can find him before Mei Wen, you might just survive. There's less than 5.5 hours until the first bell of morning. Do you want to sit here and wait for death, or take a gamble? Lunan's eyes, wild with fear and bloodshot, suddenly flickered with a glimmer of light, madness, hatred, and ruthlessness. Without looking back, he stood up, dragging his broken body into the mist. Watching him disappear, Liu Renfeng, hiding behind the door, finally let out a sigh of relief. He rubbed his aching body and groaned. "Xiaoge, you have no idea. That thing outside the door just now, it was incredibly strong. My poor little frame nearly got crushed to a pulp." Ning Shui did not reply. He lowered his head, lost in thought. "Xiaoge, what are you thinking about?" Liu Renfeng asked, curious. Ning Shui looked up and said abruptly, "Big Beard, do you think those human skins?" Hearing this, Liu Renfeng shuddered instantly. Remembering what Lu Nan had just said, he understood immediately. "Xiaoje, you mean the ghosts in the temple skin us to make kasayas?" Ning Shui paused, then added, "Monks seek purity of the 6 senses. That's why those things flay the skin but leave the hair. These things, their minds are truly twisted." Liu Renfeng felt a chill run down his spine, horrific images flashing through his mind. In that moment, a bolt of lightning struck his thoughts. Something clicked. Buddhists and immortals both seek incense offerings and merit. Those things boiled us that porridge. They were imitating the Buddhas, cutting his flesh to feed the eagle. No wonder the meat in the porridge was inedible. It was the flesh of the ghosts in the temple. Ning Shui nodded. Exactly. The eagle, once it eats the flesh, completes them. They gain merit and consider themselves half Buddhas. But obviously, it's not enough. They still want a brand new kasaya. As these thoughts took shape in his mind, Liu Renfeng suddenly remembered the note they had found in the room on the first day. He rushed to the bookshelf and flipped the note over. Staring at the writing on the paper, Liu Renfeng suddenly cried out, "Damn it, Xiaoge, look at this!" Ning Shui brought the red candle over. By its light, he saw that the words "Become Buddha" on the note were growing brighter and brighter. The writing was crooked, the strokes uneven. As it moved across the paper, it looked like a person with every bone in their body broken, twisting into an unnatural posture. The madness and sickness within it seemed ready to seep right out of the paper. "Put it away." Ning Shui took the note and placed it in a drawer beside the bookshelf. Just as he turned around, his gaze suddenly stopped. He saw an eye appear in the small hole of their room's window. The moment it met Ning Shui's gaze, the owner of that eye turned and fled. A shadow flashed past. He immediately ran into the mist and vanished. Ning Shui walked to the window. He peered out through the small hole, but he could only dimly make out a blurry figure in the fog, slowly walking away. He frowned. That eye gave him a familiar feeling. He could be certain that the owner of that eye was definitely one of the people they had encountered in the past few days. But because the time he had faced it was too short, Ning Shui couldn't determine who the owner of this eye was. Who is he? Why is he spying on our room? Ning Shui wondered. Because the mist outside the room was far too dangerous, he didn't recklessly open the door. A night passed. The next morning, the first bell echoed through the temple. It reverberated into every corner, dispelling the morning mist. Ning Shui pushed the door open and went out. He walked straight to the room next door to check. There was no sound of Chai Shan in the room. Beside the bed were 2 red candles, one long, one short. He didn't hesitate. He directly put these 2 red candles into his pocket. After 2 nights of experimentation, Ning Shui was very certain that the red candles provided by the little monks had the effect of warding off evil. They were extremely valuable. It would be a waste not to use them. After finishing that, he searched the room again. This time, he felt a piece of paper under the corner of the bed. On it, there was also writing in cinnabar. Above, worship the Buddhas. Below, prepare the incense and fire. The handwriting on this paper was different from the writing in their room, but the words were all filled with madness. a thought suddenly struck Ning Shui. He immediately searched rooms 4, 3, and 2, one by one. Sure enough, in every room there was a piece of paper written with a cinnabar brush. Arranged in order, they were: 2. Take a human heart, boil it into porridge. 3. Flay a human, make it into a kasaya robe. 4. The vulture eats my flesh, I take the vulture's skin. 5. Above, worship the Buddhas. Below, prepare the incense and fire. 6. Become Buddha. When all these writings on paper were laid out, both Ning Shui and Liu Renfeng were horrified. They knocked on the door of room number 1. They retrieved the final piece, which was also the first one from that room. 1. The God goes, the God comes, the God reaps. Ning Shui did not hide anything. He showed all the pieces of paper to the 2 people in room number 1. This was not a valuable secret. After they looked, both felt a bone-piercing chill run down their spines. What made them feel this way was not just the content on the paper, but the madness it revealed. The temple, the things in the temple see us as vultures? Shen Weiwei's face turned pale. But then a thought struck her. But Tian clearly didn't eat that bowl of meat porridge. Why was he skinned, and why was he the first? Liu Renfeng let out a cold laugh. You still can't figure it out? Didn't you see the 5th line? After a person becomes a Buddha and finishes their previous tasks, they still need to worship the Buddhas above and prepare incense below. But first, they must obtain the consent of the monks who have already become Buddhas before them. Only then can the newcomer become a Buddha. In this temple, who knows how many Buddhas there already are? If someone gets tired of their old kasaya and wants a new one, do they really need a reason? He paused, staring at Shen Weiwei's ashen face, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Even an outsider like me could see it. You never truly liked him, but that fool still went and did something stupid. Earlier, you told us what happened that first night. After Duan Zhengtian was skinned, he peeked at you through the window. Do you know why he was looking at you? Shen Weiwei lifted her head stiffly. Why? Liu Renfeng said. Because he was debating whether to come in and skin you, to trade for your skin and save his own. If he could find a new human skin before dawn, he wouldn't have to die. Besides, by then, your room was no longer protected by the red candles. If he truly wanted to harm you, you might have been the first to die, not him. But sadly, that fool chose to let you live. Honestly, this kind of situation is rare after the Crimson Door. Everyone is always thinking of ways to survive themselves. Very few people willingly sacrifice their own lives to help others. Shen Weiwei listened, and something seemed to dawn on her. Her body trembled slightly. She was silent for a long, long time, and in the end, she said nothing. The ring she had hidden away grew scorching hot. If, on that first night, she hadn't slipped that ring off Duan Zhengtian's finger, then perhaps Duan Zhengtian wouldn't have died. She knew Duan Zhengtian liked her, but she never imagined he would be willing to give up his life for her. In the outside world, she had met far too many terrible men, even her own father. Shen Weiwei longed for a love that would last until death, but she never trusted any man she met in life. She thought they only coveted her beauty, only wanted to trick her into bed. So she agreed to Duan Zhengtian's pursuit, only because she coveted the ghost artifact on his hand and his steady mentality after the Crimson Door. For the vast majority of ghost guests, it was rare to possess a ghost artifact before reaching the 4th door. She wanted to rely on Duan Zhengtian to survive longer after the Crimson Door. She treated him like a living tool. But she never expected fate to mock her so cruelly. The love she craved most had been destroyed by her own hands. In such a cold and ruthless world, could she ever meet a second Duan Zhengtian? At that moment, Shen Weiwei felt a crushing sense of loss and suffocation. In the midst of everyone's silence, the stillness outside the room was shattered by the sound of footsteps. Ning Shui stood at the door and immediately opened it, but after clearly seeing the person outside, he froze. The figure moving outside the room turned out to be a person without skin, his entire body drenched in blood. Judging by the shape, this person was Chai Shan. The morning mist had not yet fully dissipated. After the temple bell rang, a trace of dampness and cold lingered in the air, enough to raise goosebumps. At this moment, seeing the skinless corpse standing in the hallway outside the door, everyone felt a bone-piercing chill rise from the soles of their feet. Except for Ning Chu Shui, the others all retreated to the corner of the room. "Damn it! Is he still alive?" Dan Hong stammered. The corpse outside the door noticed them as it passed by their room. Its eyeballs, no longer covered by skin, were connected to a long dangling nerve hanging beside its blood-soaked teeth. It's you! It's you!" The corpse staggered step by step, lurching toward their door. "You told it where I was. You got me skinned by it. Give me back my skin! Give me back my skin!" Chaishan's venomous howl erupted from his throat, making the scalps of everyone in the room tingle. "Unfortunately, I have no idea what you're talking about." Ning Chushui stood at the door and replied calmly, "We slept soundly last night. We have no idea what happened." The skinless corpse of Chaishan screamed wildly at Ning Chushui. "It was you. It was you. You killed me. I'll become a vengeful ghost. None of you will escape," he screamed as he staggered toward Ning Chushui, as if ready to fight to the death. But after just a few steps, his gait grew even more unsteady. When he finally reached the hallway in front of their door, he lost all his strength and collapsed to the ground. Thump! Chaishan had breathed his last. As everyone confirmed his death, the corpse of Lu Nanshang also appeared not far away. Only, he seemed even weaker than Chaishan and had lost an arm. He looked at Ning Chu Shui standing at the door, mustered all his remaining strength, and uttered only 4 words, "Beware of Mei Wen." Then, like Chaishan, he fell to the ground and stopped breathing. Staring at the 2 corpses on the ground, Ning Chu Shui furrowed his brow. According to his deduction, the ones who died last night should have been Mei Wen and Lu Nanshang. But hearing Lu Nanshang's dying words, it seemed Mei Wen was still alive. Her situation was somewhat unusual. Another threat? Ning Chu Shui muttered to himself. The ghostly entities in the temple were already troublesome enough, and now, on top of that, unexpected incidents were occurring. Looking at Lu Nanshang's missing left arm, Ning Chu Shui felt that things were developing in an unfavorable direction. How did his left hand disappear? At some point, Dan Hong had walked up beside Ning Chu Shui. He stared at the 2 gruesome corpses on the ground, his stomach churning. This scene was truly too revolting. But thankfully, after surviving the first night, he had finally mustered some psychological preparation, enough to keep from vomiting. It might be related to Mei Wen. She was already acting strange yesterday. Who knows what she went through last night? You all need to be careful. Because the morning was quite cold and Mei Wen's situation had put them on edge, they didn't go anywhere. They stayed put in their room, waiting for the lunch bell. The second bell rang. Bong! After striking the bell, the little monk came to knock on everyone's door, calling them to eat. Shen Weiwei, her face pale, pointed at the 2 corpses on the ground. "Little Shifu, do you really think we can eat with this in front of us?" Looking at the corpses, Fa Hua's expression suddenly shifted. Ning Chu Shui, sharp-eyed, caught this change and spoke up proactively. "Fa Hua, little Shifu, I'm not hungry. I'll go with you at noon to bury the bodies. Leaving them here like this, Loho, it's disrespectful to them." Fa Hua was stunned for a moment, then silently nodded. Ning Chu Shui shot a glance at the other 3. Liu Renfeng shrugged and headed straight for the dining hall. Shen Weiwei and Dan Hong hesitated, but in the end, they only gave Ning Chu Shui a few words of caution before following. Ning Chu Shui was incredibly strong. He dragged 1 corpse with each hand, leaving Fa Hua staring in shock. "Fa Hua, little Shifu, why were you peeping outside our door last night?" As the 2 walked toward the storage shed, Ning Chu Shui suddenly asked. Last night, he couldn't identify the owner of that eye, but after seeing it again today, Ning Chu Shui was certain. The one who had spied on them last night was Fa Hua. Exposed by Ning Chu Shui, Fa Hua showed no surprise. He simply lowered his head, staring at the path ahead. This humble monk was worried for the benefactor's safety, so I came to check. Ning Chu Shui looked up at Fa Hua's back. "Is that all?" Fa Hua replied, "That is all." Ning Chu Shui pressed further. "Things like this have happened many times at this temple, haven't they?" Fa Hua, walking ahead, stopped in his tracks. When he turned around, his expression had turned deadly serious. "Benefactor Ning, If at all possible, you must help this humble monk find benefactor Mei Wen before nightfall. Otherwise, something terrible will happen tonight." "Something terrible?" Ning Chushui asked. "Little Shifu, can you be more specific?" Fa Hua hesitated for a long time, then uttered only 4 words. "She is the chosen one." The little monk seemed burdened by worry, saying no more. Seeing that Fa Hua was unwilling to elaborate, Ning Chushui didn't press further. But in his heart, he was already turning the words over and over again. The chosen one. Why would they call Mei Wen the chosen one? Chosen by whom? For what purpose? Lost in thought, they arrived at the storage shed. Fa Hua pulled out a shovel he had found earlier. "Benefactor Ning, let's go bury these 2 benefactors." Ning Chushui nodded. "All right." He followed Fa Hua, circling around the temple, searching for a secluded spot. "Little Shifu, didn't you say last time you wanted to bury them outside the temple?" Fa Hua nodded, then shook his head. "That was the original plan, but now we can't leave the temple." Ning Chushui was puzzled. "Can't leave? Why?" Fa Hua didn't explain, as if he hadn't heard the question. "Let's just bury them here, Benefactor Ning. It's not a place with good feng shui, but it will give the dead some peace." With that, the little monk turned and began digging a pit. Ning Chushui watched the little monk, a decision forming in his mind to check the main gate later. Fa Hua dug for about 10 minutes, barely managing to create a hole. Ning Chushui, standing nearby, felt a strange unease, as if someone was watching him. He looked around, his gaze finally settling on a large tree with thick foliage on the other side of the archway. Ning Chushui saw a person hidden behind that great tree. Half of their face was visible, staring intently in their direction. The distance was too great for Ning Chushui to make out the face clearly. He only felt that the face was very strange. It resembled Mei Wen, but not entirely. However, Ning Chushui was certain that the person's face bore an indescribable longing. Even from this far away, he could feel it distinctly. As Ning Chushui spotted them, the person flashed a sinister smile at him, then turned and ran toward the archway. That smile sent a chill down Ning Chushui's spine. "Benefactor, give this humble monk a hand." Fa Hua had only dug a shallow pit and asked Ning Chushui to help toss the 2 bodies in. "This pit is too shallow. It won't be enough to bury them," Fa Hua said. "A long night means many dreams. Let's just bury them for now." Ning Chushui threw the 2 bodies in. Fa Hua covered them with dirt, thanked Ning Chushui, and then walked away dejectedly. Watching Fa Hua's retreating back, Ning Chushui had a foreboding feeling. He returned to the dining hall. Everyone had finished eating and left, leaving only Liu Renfeng sitting there waiting for him. There weren't many monks this time. There wasn't any meat porridge either. From Liu Renfeng, Ning Chushui learned a new piece of information. However, his voice carried a clear note of suspicion. The pattern they had discovered 2 days ago had suddenly vanished today. "I feel like today will be pretty safe. This door even has a halftime break." Ning Chushui looked at Big Beard with a speechless expression. "A halftime break? You think the Crimson Door is running a charity?" I spoke with Fa Hua. That little monk's meaning was very clear. If we don't find the missing Mei Wen today, tonight will be very difficult. Liu Renfeng was startled. "Mei Wen? But this temple is only so big. Counting the little monk, there are 5 of us. Finding Mei Wen shouldn't be too hard." Ning Chushui said, "It won't be easy. Right now, we don't even know if Mei Wen can still be considered human. First, even if we find her, we might not be able to subdue her. Second, even if she can't harm us during the day, she can still run all over the temple. Trying to catch a moving target in a temple this large is no simple task." Liu Renfeng frowned upon hearing this. "That's a real problem. Let's go see those 2 first," he said. They finished eating and went back to their rooms. Ning Chushui replied, "No rush. Let's check the temple gate first." They arrived at the temple gate. The 2 doors seemed held shut by some mysterious force. No matter how hard they pushed, they couldn't budge them. The little monk said earlier that he needed to go out to bury the corpse, but today he told me he couldn't leave the temple. Liu Renfeng caught Ning Chushui's implication. "Even the little monk can't get out?" Ning Chushui hummed in affirmation. "From what we've seen over the past 3 days, the little monk is clearly a key NPC to help us escape the temple. But now, even he doesn't know how to leave. It seems the ghosts in this temple are growing stronger, Li Renfeng added. But, Xiaoge, don't you find it strange? The little monk is clearly a member of the temple. He's been a monk for years. He shouldn't be shunned by the other monks. The other monks forbidding us from leaving, that I can understand, but why drag the little monk into it? Could it be because he gave us candles at night? There were demons in the temple, trying to harm them. The little monk's nature was unclear, whether he was still human or not, but he was clearly on the side of the guest ghosts. Maybe, but I feel like things aren't that simple. After confirming the doors wouldn't open, Ning Chushui prepared to return to their quarters with Big Beard. But as they turned around, a thick layer of goosebumps erupted on the back of Ning Chushui's neck. At the far end of the path, a sinister figure revealed the upper half of its body over the wall of a pavilion, staring at them with a hungry, covetous gaze. Ning Chushui was all too familiar with that look. After all, just moments ago, this very person had been spying on him from behind a tree. Only, back then, Ning Chushui thought it was staring at the corpse on the ground or at Fa Hua. But now, he suddenly realized the target was him. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to support me.